Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Dustin, me, Heveron. You're listening to the Speaking the Absolutes podcast. Excited about today because we actually have probably the most interesting thing to me that we've had to speak about since I started this podcast. A whole 4 weeks ago, so buckle in for that. Let me just real quick drop my usual list of what's going on. Promise it won't take more than 10 seconds. Time me. My name is Dustin Heveron. This is the Speaking in Absolutes podcast. Basically here to take your questions, break down anything we can, and about what's going on in the world, and sports, and news, and politics, and all that other stuff that I'm super not qualified to speak about, but I do anyway, because damn it, it's America. Today's Memorial Day. It won't be when you listen to this, but it is now, and my forefathers died so I could have an unfounded opinion about things that I don't know anything about. That's a fact. I think that was 10 seconds. Moving right along. So today we're basically going over the full Monty of a little show I like to call Arrested Development. I'm probably the only one who's heard of it here. I'm probably the only person on the internet who is excited. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Arrested Development was a show that ran for 3 seasons, starting in 03 to 06, got canceled well before its prime, and like many shows before it, was popular with critics, but not popular enough with like stupid idiot mass America to actually get picked up and renewed the way it should have been. So it got canceled, and like most shows, when a show gets canceled, we all get sad, and especially before its prime, it kind of gets sent away. This show, a mere 7 years later, something magical happened. The show got brought back. The story's all over the internet. If you want the full background, go to Wikipedia. I don't need to tell you about that. What I do need to say is I've seen all the entire new season. I just finished chugging a Mountain Dew and a Doppio double espresso and all this other stuff just to make sure I had enough energy for this. And I want to break it down. While it's still fresh in my head, I just watched all 15 new episodes. They're all about 30 to 35 minutes or so. So 7.5, 8 hours of footage. So real quick, if you have not seen them yet, there will be spoilers in this. I try not to go spoiler heavy usually in the podcast. This week there will be. However, they're going to be in order spoilers. So if you've watched the first 5 or 6 episodes, then you could probably listen to the first 10 minutes or so of the podcast and be okay. And also, I'm going to spend a couple minutes just generally breaking it down before I spoiler alert it. But anyway, if you're one of the purists like myself who's super concerned about not hearing what happens to the Bluth gang, then mentally get ready for how far in you're going to need to stop yourself if I start referencing things. That said, let's get started, shall we? I've already wasted so much of your day that I might as well be CNN. Okay, so my general thoughts on the series are, 1, it was good, and I don't think that can be overstated. The amount of pressure, the amount of hype, the amount of sheer anticipation building for this release, not only because of the product that it was or because of the other elements that were involved with it, but just because it had never been released this way. This is the first major Netflix release. Like, we've had House of Cards and I think Wolf's Bane Alley or some other terrible supernatural sounding thing. But they were always fully original series with only they didn't really have a certain expectation to live up to. Like, yeah, you always expect Kevin Spacey to be a good actor, but if House of Cards bombs, it's no big deal. It's kind of the first experiment for that. Arrested Development was just the exact opposite. There was so much anticipation because the Arrested Development is one of the best, if not the best, sitcom ever written, ever created, in my opinion. It's minimum top 5, and the reason I'm not saying it's the best is because I don't want to forget about how I'm sure if there's one other sitcom I'm forgetting that I loved or whatever, or it's probably that and Seinfeld for me are probably the 2 best sitcoms ever written. So, I'm not the only person who has that opinion. So there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of hype going on to see this come back, and it was good. Now, your first question is, Dustin, did it live up to the hype? And the short answer is no. And I don't mean that in a mean way or a negative way. I mean that in the fact that it didn't, because I'm not sure that it could have. The amount of hype surrounding this, the amount of coverage, the amount of targeted advertising, and anytime you take something that has had time to kind of sit and crystallize in our minds. So, we've had 6 or 7 years to think back, take this show for what it is, romanticize it. Sometimes people forget how quickly we romanticize things like this. We're like, oh, it's the greatest show ever. And that, while that's mostly true in Arrested Development's case, sometimes we can even think beyond its flaws. Specifically, a lot of people say, or choose to kind of forget, like, the first half of season 3 of Arrested Development, not that great. It wasn't bad. It was still better than 90% of anything else that was being put out there by other networks, but it wasn't that great. So, but people say, oh, so when they say, oh, Arrested Development's coming back, they're not thinking of the body as a whole or where it was headed. They're thinking specifically of probably their top 5 or 6 moments, and so that's a lot of hype to live up to. And then that mixed with everything else, the fact that every single person in Arrested Development is a bigger star now than they were when Arrested Development was on. Think about that for a second, because that's another one of those things that doesn't happen. When you look at any other successful franchise or successful sitcom, you usually have like the one guy or girl who kind of like was the foundation for it, who got it started, who made it popular, and they go on to have a good career. Seinfeld has done a lot of great things, and if you think about Michael J. Fox from Family Ties, Kirk Cameron in his own way from Growing Pains, and they all have kind of their one or two like breakout stars who do just fine. Arrested Development had such a strong ensemble cast that every single one of them is doing as much, if not more, work now than they did when they were on the show. So you have Jason Bateman, who's already an A-lister, legitimate star. Jeffrey Tambor, I've heard him doing everything from voices in superhero cartoons to he's just finished putting out The Hangover 3, one of the most successful comedy movie franchises of all times. Jessica Walter has a recurring role on Archer, which is another great animated sitcom kind of style format on FX. Michael Cera's put out several movies. You've got even Aaliyah Shawkat. However you say maybe's real life actress name. I'm sorry, Aaliyah, that I don't know how to pronounce it. I guess I'm not that much of a fan. But even she has starred and had lead roles in movies since then. And Will Arnett has been in a dozen movies and has had 3 or 4 different sitcoms lead roles with varying levels of success. So even Tony Hale has done movies and been able to find other ways to be successful. So all that's just the long way. And of course, how could I forget David Cross, he is my rock. He's a successful stand-up comedian. He had his own show, the Todd Margaret Show, which was not that great. The Increasingly Poor Decisions of Todd Margaret. But so anyway, the sheer math of getting all these people together was borderline insurmountable. It was a huge thing to take on, and to make it work. The fact that this happened at all is a miracle. The fact that it happened and it was pretty good, even more so. So now hopping back into the series, now that you're all caught up with where they've been doing. So yeah, I liked it. Did it live up to the hype? No, nothing ever could. That's the long and short of it. Nothing ever could. However, is it a solid B plus, A minus range sitcom? Yeah, absolutely. And to do that with 15 episodes, and mind you, this isn't even another challenge, is that in addition to all the other logistics and the fame that they had to deal with, this is not even the type of sitcom where you could have every single character in every single episode. There are only really a handful of scenes, I would say fewer than 10, where every single character is there or involved. Everything else they're shooting around it, or they're kind of telling different elements of the story, and that's because they had to, based on the nature of these people's schedules and how much money they could afford to spend to get everyone at the same place at the same time for so much time. So wildly, wildly impressive. And so now let me break down. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was good. I've watched it all through once. I'm gonna go back through and start watching it again here. Just because I enjoyed it, not because I feel like, oh, I've got to watch this. I don't feel an obligation. It's just, it was good, and I want to see it again. It's like the original run of Arrested. I want to be able to go through and pick up the things that are meant for me to have picked up on that I missed the first time. And I'm excited to do that. General notes are, the pacing starts a little slow. I will say that it's hard anytime you're doing a show that has such a kind of a storied history and you're going back and revisiting it to really not make it feel too much of like a reunion show, or to just lean on every single inside joke that you already have established. They didn't do that to the point where it hurt the series, but I will say that there's definitely that feel there. So probably the first, kind of a higher number than I expected. I went probably 4 or 5 episodes of oh, it's cool to see them back together, but I'm not I'm not kind of in love with it the same way I was before it really started to click and find its rhythm. Right around the first Job episode, they really had me laughing again. Now, part of that might have been because it was 3 a.m. at that time, and I was just laughing at the loading buffering screen. I would have laughed at anything at that point. But so the pacing is not great. It starts out a little slower, and the fact of the matter too is that there are certain characters that are funny than others. I think Portia de Rossi is a splendidly talented actress, and I think that I've never seen a lot of it, but Better Off Ted was very good, and she clearly has a lot of ability there. I'm just never going to find her as funny as I find Jessica Walter, David Cross, some of these other these other talents there. That's not a diss on her. That's just a mere statement of when you're putting together an all-star cast, somebody's got to be the weakest link by comparison. And even though she would blow most people away, she's blowing them all away. On most other shows here, there's such a studded, great cast that it's hard to really stand out in that same way. Another couple non-spoilers I tweeted was, I think Job had a couple episodes and Buster had an episode, and I thought they were far and away the best. I don't know if that's just because it's easier to write for those characters or because they had the most interesting storylines, or can't at this point I can't speculate on that. But those were by far the best episodes, really entertaining to watch. I will say I was texting with a couple buddies of mine who are super into it. A couple of dudes from the band House of Heroes, if I'm allowed to name drop here. I don't know if it's name dropping to mention a band that only 40,000 people in the whole world know. But anyway, so we're texting, kind of analyzing it, and I was really impressed with how quickly. The consensus was that they came back and fell into these roles really, really nicely. I don't know how much prep time they did, or how, as an actor, I don't know how hard it was for them to channel these characters. I'm sure for Jason Bateman and Will Arnett, who, are essentially playing just kind of like hyper versions of the characters they always play, or kind of exaggerated versions of themselves. I don't know what kind of process that takes, but they did it very well. So the ensemble feels natural. All the moments that feel that you liked from that kind of organic chemistry or relationship that they had from the original run, they're all still there. The relationships all feel the same. And it feels intelligent. It's a comedy that, even though there are some reunion-y moments, it doesn't pander to you at all, which I appreciate. So first couple episodes, I wasn't thrilled with it. Lindsay's storyline in particular, I just kind of found myself shrugging at. Then it started to pick up. We got a couple of Job episodes, a couple of George Michael episodes. Buster, what was rolling through. Buster, you can't do that on the balcony. I'm on the balcony. I'm on the balcony, buddy, taking your advice. But for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm on my balcony right now, which is why that gave me such a kick. But They found that same chemistry. The challenges are, it's hard to write an episodical and ensemble cast in this manner without having all the pieces. So it's almost like saying, hey, you're a marching band, write me a full, my marching director, ex-roommate, and one of my best friends, Phil, is going to yell at me for not knowing these terms, but, write me a whole halftime show piece for this kind of thing, but you can only have percussion for two of the songs. And he'd be like, well, that's ridiculous. It's going to make it really hard to sound like a marching band if I only have percussion for these two songs, and I only have, brass for these two songs, or woodwinds for these ones, and so on and so forth. And, there's only one song where you have all the characters. That's kind of the same thing they went through here. And so it's hard to pull that off it, because it feels a little more disjointed, even though they do connect everything brilliantly. I loved the way they did that. I love that. It's my Job voice, I guess. So yeah, it was good to see all of that kind of come together. And I will say, my only other general kind of complaint with this series is it was almost too much of a lead-in to either another season or a movie or something else. They spent, and they this might just be my own expectation, again, not being met, but they spent so much time catching you up on where every character had been, what they've been doing, and what they're kind of like now over the past 5 years within each episode, that only really at the end of the series run did it feel like they were ready to start a new story, or I only felt caught up essentially at the end of it. And so there's this kind of scene at the end between George Michael and Michael that you kind of feels like it's the start of a new episode or a new series or a new run or a movie, rather than the culmination of 15 episodes. And so I don't know how much of that is intentionally setting up for a new project. They've all been very obviously open and vocal in speaking about wanting to do a movie or maybe another in a series or another, a Christmas holiday special or something like that. So it's hard to tell exactly how much of that is planned to just really get you anticipating it, or if it's just, but ultimately, while I understand that to a degree, to have every different angle and every different story kind of be leading up and merging into this one moment, just to have that kind of moment or that kind of ending, few minutes not really culminate in anything just yet. It left me a little unfulfilled. Man, again, maybe that's good. Maybe that's what they're looking for. But I'm a big fan of, even if you're putting a trilogy together, to have each movie be its own standalone piece. I thought the Batman movies are a great example. Even though it's a spectacular trilogy and the character arc through all three is pretty good. I'm being generous there. I don't have time to go into it now, but I actually did not like The Dark Knight Rises, the third one, very much. But each one is also its own standalone movie. You don't leave any of those movies specifically saying, well, I'm not really going to be able to feel comfortable knowing how this comes out or finding where that character went until I see the next movie. I thought Iron Man did a good job of avoiding that too, where they said, hey, we get that this is a character you want to come back and see and enjoy and interact with, but we also know that you need kind of that closure, that sense of finality, because there's so much time. The movie business, from what little I know as an outsider, is it's not an easy road. It's not like they're putting out these series now and in 6 months we'll have the movie greenlit and shot and ready to go. There's every possibility that if a movie or a new set of shows or whatever even happens, that it's another 5, 6, 7 years away. For sure, it's at minimum 2 to 3 years away. So that just, to me, leans too much on a fan base to say, hey, stick around and be interested. You need to give them something and that they can have, or that sense of closure that can carry them through until the next project comes up. And I thought that actually that's what I liked about the third season. I thought the second half of the third season was really well done, and I thought maybe it's because they knew they were getting canceled, but I thought the series finale in general said, hey, this is a good way where you have this sense of closure, you have this good kind of stopping point, like almost catch your breath sort of vibe to it, and at the same time the door was still left open to do more, and there was a lot of that missing in this new season for me, where it's like, well, we didn't really have that same sense of closure. There's storylines aren't wrapped up that way. So who knows? Maybe it's intentional, and I'll look like an idiot when in 6 months they do release a movie or another set of series or something like that. What I will say is it's worth watching. Your highs are very high in terms of relatable, funny moments. Your lows are very meh. Obviously anything out there is better than whatever's on, Arrested Development on their worst day is still better than 2.5 Men on their best day, from my experience. So, it's worth seeing. If you need to drop $8 on your Netflix membership, watch them all within a month, do it. It's worth it. It's better, it's cheaper than the price of a movie ticket, and you will enjoy it way more. Yeah, and so I'm excited. I think they did a good job. I think that they said, hey, working within the means of what we have, which is a smaller budget, all these logistical stuff, we can still put out a quality product. And to me, that more than anything else speaks volumes about the talent behind this project and its ability to get more. Anytime you show you can do more with less, that's what it takes to get Hollywood on board. And so hopefully that they'll carry that mantra into even bigger and better setups with a movie or another set of series down the road. All I can say is I'm just happy that they didn't just, piss and crap and destroy all my favorite characters and all my favorite moments. And they also, to their credit too, there's a lot of new fresh moments and a lot of new fun stuff. It would be easy to get too overly referential and just call back to all the stuff we know we want to hear, just tons of come-ons. And they do kind of ride that line a little closely sometimes, where it's like, all right, so we get it. But they never cross it again to the detriment of the show. So that's my take on it. I will watch again, and maybe it'll come up in the future with more in-depth analysis for you. The Buster hand bit is amazing. It's just the whole thing is awesome and worth watching. So my tip of the hat, I actually have a hat on today. Tip of it to Mitch and the entire crew. They did a great job, and I'm excited to rewatch. And at the end of the day, if you can leave people excited to rewatch what you've put out there and excited to anticipate more, That's all you can ask for. That already puts you into the TV or comedy or movie Hall of Fame already. So good job to everyone. If you agree with me, hit me up at don'taskdustin@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at OCDustino. Let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. If you saw stuff I missed or whatever your opinion is, share it. Let's make it interactive, and I will tell you why you're wrong. That's everything you need to know. Thank you for hanging out and on this Arrested Speaking in Absolutes. My name is Dustin Hebron. We put them out every Thursday. New Minute Monday comedy videos go up every Monday. New blogs every Wednesday when I have time. And I'm, acting and working and everything on the side too. So that's all you need to know about me. Thank you for your time as always. It is a pleasure sharing the internet with you. Cheers. I think I did all of that without taking a single breath. Good job.